This episode is brought to you by Big Brand Energy Live, my signature full day experience for ambitious women who are ready to stop thinking about their next level and start moving like they belong there. Last October, I hosted a much smaller version of this event, and in the months that followed, women from that room went on to launch retreats in the south of France, book major speaking gigs, secure announcing roles, hire full time staff, and even hit their first $1 million year. That is what happens when you get into the right room. Big Brand Energy Live is happening June 11th, 2026 in Surrey, British Columbia, Canada, and tickets are officially on sale with the event already over 40% sold out. If you know you're meant for more visibility, more authority, and bigger opportunities, this room was created for you. Grab your ticket now at the link in the show notes. Use code FAMEREADY to save $50 off your tickets, and I'll see you in June. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Fame Ready, the podcast to show you that anything is possible. Yes, including fame. I'm your host, top personal branding and public relations expert, Katrina Owens. And God, I am tired. I'm coming at you live from Burlington, Ontario. Okay. I just spent the last 2 days at High Vibe Women, an incredible female entrepreneur event here in Ontario. And before that, I was spending some time with my parents, my family. I really just let myself be parented for a couple days, which now that I have to fly back to the West Coast this evening, my preemptive homesickness is setting in. I am it's so it's so funny because I use the word home so loosely. So I'll call my home with Gabriel on the West Coast in Vancouver. That's home. But then I also call where my parents live here in Ontario home. So to me, home is, I guess, wherever I am. And tonight I will go back to my adult home with Gabriel on the West Coast. But I have to tell you, every time I leave Ontario, I feel sad. And I don't think it helps that I am coming off of 2 weeks of consistent travel. So last week I was in Madison, Wisconsin, literally came home for I want to say that was 48 hours, did laundry, packed my bags, and then I was back on a plane to the East Coast. And that's a lot. And I am ready to just be in my house and relax and get back to business. But you know what? I thought that how I'm feeling right now and everything that I've just done over the last 2 weeks is a really great segue into today's topic, which is your personal brand is a full-time job. And this is something that I find myself repeating to clients all the time, even prospective clients. They it's because here's the thing, you guys, having a personal brand looks glamorous, right? It's, we use the language, get paid for being yourself, brand partnerships, speaking engagements, podcast monetization, all of that stuff looks really glamorous, fun, and I think to a lot of people easy. And so that's why people want to build a personal brand, because they want to have ease and fun and flow and be seen and heard and recognized. If you're listening to this podcast, I know you want all of those things. But what I have found, unfortunately, is that most people actually aren't willing to do the work that it takes to build a personal brand that's actually monetizable. And this does not matter if you have 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 Instagram followers. That is not enough. That is not enough for you to actually build a 6-figure personal brand off of. So I thought it might be helpful for me to walk you through what building a 6-figure personal brand actually looks like as a full-time job, because for me, it is one. And I actually really think that that's why I've seen so much success in building my personal brand and monetizing it and building out these revenue streams with only 3,000 followers on Instagram. Okay. I honestly think it's because I've treated my personal brands like my full-time job since I closed my agency. So if you're tuning in for one of the very first times and you're just getting acquainted with me, because this podcast has been growing at a really rapid pace, which is so cool. So thanks for being here. If you haven't had a chance to kind of listen to some of the earlier episodes or learn more about my story, I'm going to give you guys just a little quick reminder. I left my corporate career about just over 3 years ago. And I left my corporate career and started a marketing and public relations agency. And I had that agency for almost 2 years. And towards the end, I started to get really miserable, really burnt out. And it was evident that it was because I was living a really misaligned life. I was running a marketing agency because that's what I thought I had to do to be credible, be seen as an authority. I knew, like, deep in my heart of hearts, all I really wanted was to be a personal brand, to have brand partners, to do this type of media work. That is all I really, really wanted deep down in my soul. But I just thought I was too new, not enough experience, definitely not enough followers. So I was building the agency first, because how can you monetize like a small personal brand, right? Right. We're going to get into that. So I built up this agency, and in the kind of 6 months before I fully closed it, things started to take a turn. My revenue started to rapidly decline. I was like miserable, depressed, a grumpy bitch every single day. And I was just like, wow, I really left like my corporate career, which did not make me happy, to now just like work even more at something that was making me even more miserable. And to keep a long story short, there's lots of episodes you can kind of go back and listen to this story in full. But I basically had a mentor suggest that I go through all of my revenue streams at the time. So as an agency, we did like web design, social media management, PR management, brand design. I did fractional marketing consulting. I did so many things. And I had coaching programs off the side of my desk. And so she had me go back through all of my revenue streams and essentially calculate which ones were the most profitable. And in doing that, we realized, surprise, surprise, my coaching programs, the thing I was kind of building off the side of my desk, those were the things that were the most profitable part of my business. But they were the things that I didn't actually think were like viable, like business ideas or like services that I could like really like build a profitable business off of, all the limiting beliefs. But my mentor showed me that that was kind of the missing piece, that I was spread way too thin. And she basically said, from here on out, you only sell two things: personal branding and public relations coaching. You sell it in a one-on-one, you sell it in a group format, that's it. And then she did a caveat: if you get other like inquiries for different services coming in while you're making this transition, obviously don't turn down that revenue. But from a external outbound marketing perspective, this is the only thing that you focus on, these coaching programs. And so I made that switch in November 2024. So it's been just over a year since making that flip. And now I am a profitable personal brand. My coaching and consulting is one of my largest revenue streams. Event hosting, brand partnerships, content monetization, and speaking engagements are my other revenue streams. And I don't do any done for you agency services at all. And I don't do anything that I don't want to do. I don't do anything that doesn't align with my personal branding for public relations brand. I am very selective in the work that I take on. And that really was the key to personal brand growth in the early days. Okay. So I've been having this conversation a lot because I did a speaking engagement last week in Madison, Wisconsin. So obviously this story of becoming a profitable personal brand or a six-figure personal brand, that is what my talk is based on. I gave this talk last week on stage to about 80 entrepreneurs, and so many people came up to me afterwards to say, your story really resonates. I've been thinking I need to make a pivot. This is what I want to do. It's more personal brand based, but I'm scared. Like, how do you do it? How do you let go of the revenue? And my biggest disclaimer here, like put it in neon lights, is I don't suggest that anyone does it the way that I did it. Okay. So I took my revenue all the way down to like basically ground zero. Okay. I was paying myself out of my personal savings. I only had enough business revenue on a monthly basis to pay a contractor and like our subscriptions and like try to like pay down some debt. So it's stretchy. So for me, I had no choice but to go all into coaching because I was like, well, let's try something else. The problem is when you are trying to sell multiple things. So let's just use the example of an agency owner because I attract a lot of them. When you are trying to market an agency, but also trying to build a personal brand that does coaching and other things that aren't agency related services, you are already watered down. Okay. The differentiation, like most agency owners can't strongly differentiate themselves enough against their agency. So that's really like the first problem that I see. So I think people need to be really honest with themselves. So if you're listening to this, you need to be really honest with yourself. What is the thing you actually want to be doing? Do you want to be an agency owner? Because if you do, then that's great. But just know that your personal brand is going to be built around being an agency owner because at the end of the day, the business, the revenue is going to come from the agency. And that doesn't mean that you can't have brand partnerships and speaking engagements and all these other like monetizable opportunities. Just means the personal brand is going to be positioned differently. If you are someone who wants to have a coaching business or events or be seen like as a consultant, a mastermind facilitator, that is very different than being an agency owner. Okay. And this is where people get hung up because the agency revenue feels really good and we don't think that we're ready enough to do the thing over there. But it is going to be very, very hard to do both of those things for all my agency owner friends listening to this because your agency is going to cannibalize the opportunities for your personal brand because people are going to say, okay, well, I will just hire you to do this for me. I did this. I actually joined someone's membership for a particular service offering, and I realized I got way too busy. I wasn't able to implement. I didn't want to like quote unquote do it myself anymore. And so I left her membership and hired her as a done for you service provider. And for her, maybe that's okay. But see how her agency cannibalized her membership. She wants to grow and scale and not be so in the business, but because she has these other offerings, it's cannibalizing it. Right. So that's just something to be aware of. So if you're someone who is straddling a bunch of different things, and this goes for anyone, you don't have to be an agency owner, you don't even have to be a marketer to relate to this. What you need to be able to grow a profitable personal brand, like the one I described that has all these diversified revenue streams, is you need a through line that goes through every single thing that you do. So if we use my brand, for example, like I'm Katrina Owens, personal branding and public relations consultant. My like whole mission in this world through everything I do is to show business owners what's possible for themselves, including fame and fortune. Okay. So that is what I talk about on stage. That is what I talk about on this podcast. That's what I talk about in my events. That's what the concept of my events is built around. That's what my coaching programs do. Yes, each and every one of those things has a different function, but the through line is all the same. And so I'm going to give you a great example of why this is important because I was talking to an event sponsor the other day, and I have a very unique way of working with brand and event sponsors. I basically integrate them into my personal brand. This allows me to increase the like bottom line. So instead of just saying, hey, here's an event sponsorship for $5,000, it's, hey, here's a more integrated partnership that's $10,000, which isn't just like you're sponsoring the event. It feels like a more organic integration into my personal brand. And you're going to start to see all of this unfold over the next couple months in real time, especially if you're a podcast listener. So stay tuned. It's going to be pretty cool. But I can do this because I have a through line. I can do this because the messaging of what I do is the same through each and every asset. So it doesn't mean like one asset appeals to one type of audience member or client. And I'm not trying to like speak to all these different people. It's like it makes sense for someone to sponsor the podcast, my content, my events, because the messaging is all the same. It's reaching different people. We can integrate the message in different ways. Obviously, it takes 32 touch points or something to sell something these days. So there's that piece. So that is what you actually need as the foundation if you really want to build a profitable personal brand. Okay. So that's the very first thing you need. And when you start doing this, you must know that this work becomes your full-time job. Okay. So going back to an agency owner, or even the founder of a product-based business, or I even see this with, if you're someone who is a service provider, but you have a large firm, maybe it's interior design or real estate development or accounting. The problem is, if you are not ready to make personal branding and PR your full-time job as the founder, you're never going to be able to grow it. And that's because you as the founder are the only one that can grow your personal brand. Sure, you can hire someone like me to help you build it out. You can eventually hire a social media manager. You can eventually hire a copywriter, but only you can build up the audience, the through line, and all of that. You can do it with my support for sure. But the reason why I say only you can do this work is because I actually feel really, really strongly in the fact that most personal brands should not work with a social media agency. Okay. If you are a personal brand and you're outsourcing your social media management, you are losing your voice. You're losing your unique perspective. You are losing your edge. Okay. If you want to run a personal brand based business, it is a requirement in 2026 that you understand how you can make social media work for you and you are the one running it. Okay. That's the very first thing I want to get out of the way, because that is one of the biggest things that most personal brands will spend time working on. But you cannot build a personal brand without some sort of online social media presence. Okay. Even if you're someone that's have a big offline network. I do a lot of offline stuff. I get a lot of referrals. That's great. And maybe that works for where you're at right now. But if you want to go to the next level, you need to be building online real estate for your personal brand. And social media is how you do it. And by social media, I don't always mean Instagram. This could be LinkedIn. This could be Threads, could be something else entirely. Depends on who your audience is. But social media becomes one of those non-negotiable tasks that only you can do. I was having this conversation with a client of mine who's fairly new, and we've built out our strategy, and she's feeling a block around starting to create more content that's in line with her personal brand and not just the service she provides. And this is where I have to be tough love Katrina and say, you must push through this block. And in the beginning, it might just be giving yourself the discipline, the time block, whatever you actually need to put in the calendar to bring it to life. You at some point, it's just discipline, right? I also see this for clients who, will you need to spend a lot of time pitching podcasts, speaking engagements, and brands if that's something that you want to grow. That takes up a lot of time. If you are not willing to carve out the time to do those tasks, then that is not going to move the needle for you either. Building a personal brand and getting paid for being yourself is not sitting back, relaxing, taking endless days off. It's showing up for yourself in an entirely different way. It's, I think about myself in my own business. I probably work 12 hours a day, the way I'm always thinking about content or connecting with people or answering emails. And I know there are the anti-hustle queens out there that are work-life balance. I actually think my life is very balanced, honestly. That doesn't mean I don't work my ass off. And that doesn't mean that I spend 50% of my time working and 50% of my time relaxing. I love the idea of work-life integration where it's just a little bit more flowing. I go show up for my business. I get the work done. Today is a perfect example. Okay. It's Sunday. I've been traveling for 2 weeks. I am, I going back home tomorrow, where I will hopefully be home for about a month before my next event. Maybe 5 or 6 weeks, actually. Hopefully have some things that are coming up as like different things to go to, but I'm debating if I'm gonna actually go. I do like spending time at home when I can. So I woke up this morning. It's my travel day. I've just spent the last 2 days networking, connecting, socializing, growing my business in person in the room. Okay. Before I move on, take a note, because if you're not getting yourself into rooms, if you're not going into in person events, if you are not trying to expand your network beyond your followers, that is something that every single personal brand also needs to invest time doing. So when I say your personal brand is a full-time job, this is exactly what I mean. Okay. So there's that. So then, okay, I woke up this morning and in my head, I'm like, this morning is going to be like relaxed, chill. I've got a lot of work to catch up on. It's a Sunday, so luckily, like, no one else is really working. So this gives me a chance to catch up. So what I did, I woke up, let myself just like kind of watch some reality TV and order room service, answered some emails, made a social media post. I get late checkout, so that's freaking awesome. So, I packed up my stuff, got ready. Then I'm like, I'm going to record this podcast episode. And then I'm going to go to the spa. I'm going to go to the spa for a couple hours. I'm going to have a workout, a massage, and then I'll go to the airport. And I'll go to the airport and I have like certain tasks that I've assigned myself to do at the airport, write my LinkedIn newsletter. I have a 4-hour flight to Calgary. I am going to finish editing my book so I can set it to send my manuscript to my editor when I land in Calgary. She's going to start editing it tomorrow, which is so exciting. So my flight is literally dedicated to me reading my book, editing it, making any final changes before I send it off to her when I land. I have like a 3-hour layover. So I will probably try to just wrap up any loose ends that might be outstanding, maybe map my plan for the week. Honestly, I'll probably just like also watch a show on my laptop while I'm waiting for my next flight, because I'll be tired by then. And then it's a quick like 1-hour flight back to the lower mainland. So I'll do that, and then I'll go home and I'll go to bed. And then tomorrow, because it's like my whole body is obviously out of whack from time zone shifts, travel, airplanes. Tomorrow is an easier day. So tomorrow I will wake up, no alarm, let myself sleep in if I need it. Then I'll go to the gym. I have a couple appointments, like just personal appointments. So I'll do those. And then I'll come home and I'm going to finish a client strategy. And that's Monday. And that is really how I see myself integrating all of my like work, life, personal balance. Okay. I really try not to do like client facing, outward facing Zoom calls, events, or anything on Mondays, because I find I always need Mondays to like set the tone for me and get like myself settled back into a schedule. This week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are events, client obligations, all of that, which is so great. I'm so lucky. And then I think I'm going to an event on Saturday too, because I think one of my clients is speaking next weekend. So I think I know I'm going to that. I think it's next weekend. But do you see how busy that schedule is? And I'll be so honest, my personal brand and my business is growing at a rapid pace. Like I blink and I'm like, it's happening. And it's really up for me to hold the vision, continue trusting, just be so excited about all the opportunities. But it takes work. And that is the biggest misconception I think people have when they decide they want to build a personal brand. And here's the thing, I had to build my personal brand and make it profitable because I didn't have a choice. Okay. I had no other revenue streams. It's not like I have a rich husband. Gabriel is also self employed. There was no room for me to just like decide that I would take my time with this thing. I had to make this work. I had no other choice. I could not go get another job, because honestly, I had so much invested in my business that I was like, well, even if I went and got like a job that paid $150,000 a year, that's not going to be enough for me to pay back my business loan, live my life, all of those things. It's just not. And also, I also just think I'm like corporately unhireable at this point. I could never go back to working a quote unquote real job, because I know too much and I've seen too much about how the other half can live. By the other half, I mean like the self-employed. But that's the thing. I think a lot of the times, if there isn't this pressure to like make it work, people aren't going to put the effort in that they really need to make it work, right? If we don't feel the financial obligations, if we don't have financial obligations, if we, if the need to make our personal brand work actually isn't that important or significant in our lives because we have like maybe other money or whatever. Not my not my life, but I know that that's the case for a lot of people. If money's not the motivator, then something else has to be. So maybe you need to be motivated by your mission. Maybe you need to be motivated by wanting to be seen and have fame. Like, I know that money isn't the motivator for every single person. I feel it in myself. Sometimes I have months that were really great, and then I'm like, oh, we can like kind of sit back a little bit. And then I catch myself and I'm like, whoa, no, we cannot. This is when we like continue to build momentum, and we've got to like compound the efforts. When you're seeing the success, whether it's the money, the visibility, or something else, that is when you double down. Okay. That is when you put even more effort into growing and thriving and connecting. It's so funny. I was messaging, she listens to this podcast. So, like, hi, Christina. I'm going to talk about you. Christina Bartold from High Vibe Women, one of the co-founders. Her and I were messaging this morning, and she had invited me to go for breakfast, and then I didn't read it for like 2 hours, and I was like, you are truly an extrovert, because as soon as an event is over, I'm like, and I'm not talking to anyone. Like, I actually, apart from the man who delivered my room service this morning, I have not spoken out loud to anybody yet. And it's been fabulous. And I do that because I am an extroverted introvert. So as much as I like love going to an event, seeing people, meeting people, talking to people, I need time to like recharge and like get my bearings. So I'm like, oh no, like this is not a social day. I'm not going for breakfast with anybody. But Christina then said something to me where she's like, I'm so lit up. I'm sending out like 100 sponsor emails today. And I was like, honestly, your event like motivated me to do that too. And I just admired her saying that so much, because I think when you're so passionate about building something, you don't stop. And I honestly think that that's the problem. It's the problem with a lot of like personal brands who maybe aren't even doing the thing that they're passionate about. Like, maybe you've told yourself that the personal brand you've built or the business you've built is the thing that you're passionate about. But if you really look deep inside of you, it's actually not. And that's a problem too, right? Because now you kind of did what I did when I started my agency. I like just created a new prison. And unfortunately for me, that wasn't going to work. And I think I see a lot of people just tolerate their own bullshit for way too long. You tolerate being unhappy, unsatisfied, but you're also not willing to put the work in or the reps in to do something different or see a different result. And like the last 2 weeks of traveling, and so this is just like the other part that I wanted to talk about, because the last 2 weeks of traveling have been like rough. Okay. Like, to travel back and forth through time zones, to like be super social, to be off schedule, to be eating like randomly, not on a normal schedule, not normal food that you would typically eat if you were at home. Like, those are all really hard adjustments. And I think I can get hard on myself, where like I look at my calendar and I'm like, the whole week was travel. I like barely was on Zoom. And then I'm like, oh, wait, that I was working, but I was working in a different capacity, because even for me, I had a coach, mentor, ask me a couple weeks ago when I was feeling a little bit unmotivated. She said to me, well, like, what's, your event is selling, your coaching programs are selling, you've got solid revenue. So, like, why don't you start building towards like what the next like dreamy out of the box thing is for you? And I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. But for me, that's like being a pop star. And she's like, okay, well, then work towards that goal. And honestly, I was like, oh, yeah, like that's the same advice I would give to somebody else. It's like, build towards the next thing. Because it's not like I'm going to just now abandoned everything that I'm working on. Actually, everything that I'm working on right now, like, is in transition to like my pop star career. So that was kind of the kick in the pants that I needed to keep building, to keep growing my network, growing my audience, showing up in a way that serves my biggest goals and ambitions, right? Not necessarily serving like filling my coaching programs. Those are still there. Fame Ready Entrepreneur Program is actually popping off. And before we go, actually, let's just talk about a couple of my clients inside the Fame Ready Entrepreneur Program who are seeing some incredible results doing this work, okay? Because there are two women that come to mind who are absolutely crushing it right now. Both of them have been in the program since October. So they joined Fame Ready Entrepreneur after the last Big Brand Energy event. They loved the vibe of Big Brand Energy. They thought it was fabulous. They felt inspired. And then they were like, I need to work with Katrina and be in her realm all the time. And literally, Big Brand Energy continues to unfold. So let me first shout out Diana. So Diana is an incredible insurance and financial strategist. She has helped me with so many different insurance products and strategizing more opportunities to build wealth inside my business. Diana is doing her TED Talk on Saturday, her very first one. It is the first thing that she ever pitched. It's her very first speaking engagement. I have to say, I did give Diana some support in crafting her initial pitch and application. Cannot take credit for her securing that opportunity. She did it all herself, but I helped her along in that process. So she's doing that TED Talk on Friday or on Saturday. And she also just announced her biggest event. It's called Mama Masterminds, the Rich Mom Reset, and it is at the end of April. And I'm one of her lead partners. So I signed on as a sponsor for Diana's event. And what I love about Diana is like she is doing all of the things that we are talking about. Plus, she lives like a very beautiful, integrated life. She has a big family. I can't remember how many kids she has, but there's a lot. She has an incredible business. She runs these events. She takes care of her body and her health. She does all of the things. And that's because she treats this personal brand growth like it is her full-time job. And, on our weekly coaching calls inside Fame Ready, I will give her some different support on like what to actually focus on in that moment. Because for Diana, I think much like me, her vision's so big, she sees herself being able to literally do anything. And so for her, her next step is growing more brand partners and bringing on, she sold out. Her event is like 50% sold out already. It's at the end of April, so it's only about 6 or 7 weeks away, maybe. And she is already 50% sold out. She had partners, sponsors sign on right away. And she's just like, this is the most effortless thing I had ever done. And I'm like, yeah, because it's exactly what you were put on this earth to do. And she is working so hard at like running her main business, building up this like other thing where there's still a through line between both things. Even her TED Talk on Saturday is literally connecting both the finance and the motherhood. So like the personal brand is so integrated. And so she's someone who I think just exemplifies this whole episode so well. Like Diana is one of the hardest working women I've ever met. And that is why she's seeing the results and the growth that she is. And then the other woman that comes to mind is another Fame Ready entrepreneur named Ashley. Ashley came to Big Brand Energy sessions in October, and she really wanted to launch a women's golf community. And she like shared that goal out loud in front of the entire audience. And since then she has. So I just went to her launch party for the golf girl community. So it was sold out. She had all these incredible like little pieces of merch. She had amazing prizes. She has signed brand partners, major golf brands. She has 2 retreats plus another golf tournament that literally I think by today is like probably entirely sold out at this point. I think the last time we chatted, she had 2 spots left, and now I'm going to guess those spots are gone. And she has 2 retreats that she's selling as well. And again, she's like, it was effortless. And she is someone who literally like I think just over a year ago was doing her copywriting business. And I was like, let that shit go. Let yourself go 2 feet into what you really, really want to build. And it wasn't easy and effortless in the beginning. And she's still, her herself too, also a mom, also trying to support her family, herself, her business, her health. But she's doing it all. And she really is like seeing all of these incredible results. And this is just the freaking beginning, you guys. She's barely scratched the surface on what's possible for herself. So I share these stories because it's not just me, okay? It's not just me saying, this is how you can build this. It is like the women that come into the Fame Ready Entrepreneur Program, that go to Big Brand Energy Live, that stay connected to the women that are doing the things that they want to do. Those are the women who build the profitable 6-figure personal brands. So if you're interested in joining the Fame Ready Entrepreneur Program, any new members actually get a free ticket to Big Brand Energy Live. So if you're listening to this before May 31st, 2026, you can pop into the show notes to learn more about the Fame Ready Entrepreneur Program. And once you register, we will reach out to set you up with a ticket to the event. So you can kind of get a 2-in-1, because Big Brand Energy is like the physical space. It is the physical manifestation of being in a room with women who are doing the things that you want to do. And then the Fame Ready Entrepreneur Program is my 12-month group container. You can enroll at any time. It's totally evergreen. And that is where we continue to do the work. So you come to Big Brand Energy Live with your biggest business goal, the one that is totally on your heart, the thing that you want to be doing. You bring that to the event, and then you will leave with your next action step. But the action step only goes so far, right? Because once you do that one, you're going to need the next one, and you're going to need some support, and you're going to need proximity, and you're going to want community with women who are doing the same thing. So come to Big Brand Energy Live, join the Fame Ready Entrepreneur Program, follow me at Katrina Owens PR on Instagram. If you love this podcast, please give it a 5-star rating and review on Apple and Spotify, wherever you listen. And this is Fame Ready. I'll see you all next week. Okay. Toodles.